and welcome to another night, Sunday, April 11th, Agent Paranormal on Disruption Network. Tonight, we are talking cemeteries. Before we begin and introduce who is here with us tonight, I do want to say that Disruption Network, Agent Paranormal does not condone trespassing on any kind of private properties, and don't do it. Just plain and simple. So here we go. Joining me tonight, we have Vinny, Pete, and Steph in studio. Very happy to have Pete back with us. He's been out for a little bit. And of course, it's always fun to have Steph and Vinny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, cemeteries. I think Vinny has like the closest attachment to cemeteries. You know, with his job.
I'm in quite often, almost every day.
People are dying to get in there.
Pete, you're back. I could tell. Cemeteries are a very peaceful place to be, and we like to keep it that way. As Kev said, we ask you please don't go in to disrupt anything. At darkness, please do not go in. It's against the law to be in a cemetery after hours. Most signs are posted. If you get caught in one, you can be arrested for trespass. Don't disrupt anything inside of a cemetery. Make sure you show complete respect.
Can I piggyback off that just a little
Sure.
bit there?
Please do.
I think we need to make, and I know you're in the business, so that you're the perfect person to ask. People say, well, that doesn't matter. Unless you've actually buried somebody or you don't know this, each plot of land is actually issued a deed, or is that only in the Catholic world? Like I know for every plot we have in our family, there's an actual deed. So that family actually owns that piece of land. So technically, you don't think you are trespassing? You really are.
The deed is designed to give you the legal rights to bury someone on that property. The deed gives you, it's not a purchase of the actual site, it's the allowance to have you be buried there. And you're right, you do have a deed to that. So if you're on it and you destroy something on it, you become liable for the destruction of that site.
So, yeah, it's basically the same thing as destruction of private property.
Right. And you're trespassing on a cemetery, which will land you in jail if you're in there after hours. If you do some damage to a stone or monument or the sites, you can be charged with a felony. Depends on the level of damage is done. They don't want people just wandering around at night. God forbid there's a hole and you get injured. You know, you are trespassing.
So for all of you out there in the cemetery, you're drinking or you're smoking the pots or any of this stuff, and you're having a party on my parents, I'm going to find out who you are, and we're going to come have a party. Trust me.
I would be so terrified if I fell into a grave. That's my nightmare.
I actually know somebody who did.
Really?
They were telling us the story at one of the paranormal conventions we were at, and it's like, well, did you see the sign where it said "Do not enter at nighttime"? And it's like that's one of the safety reasons. And he went by himself, which is even more dangerous because
It's a long way
thank God
down.
it wasn't 6 feet down. I mean,
But it's still a long way.
Yeah.
There's rocks at the bottom, usually.
Ugh.
and we also do know somebody whose son was possessed in a cemetery at night. It's all been on all the ghost shows. I'm afraid to mention their names because I didn't talk to them ahead of time. But just don't go there.
Just don't do it.
Just don't go there.
Things can happen.
Go there during the day. They're beautiful. I mean, I love taking walks through there. Like Vinny said, they're very peaceful, especially if you get into the older cities, the 1600s, 1700s. You have all the iconic little designs, the cherubs, the little fat cherub thingies with their wings and all these fingers pointing up. It's always this finger pointing up, just remember.
Which finger
Although
would you
once
like?
I seen the devil one, which really blew my mind. But
I do love cemeteries. I did when I was in film school. I did a lot of movies in cemeteries, and I became as the girl who filmed in cemeteries. So
If you go up to the one in Barrie, Vermont, you'll see the most gorgeous headstones because that's where they make them. And people spend lots of time building them. And they'll make them special for their own family members.
I've heard of that cemetery. I never got a chance to go, but I want to.
It's absolutely tremendous to see.
I went to the cemetery down in Brooklyn when I was living down there. I mean, that is absolutely enormous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you couldn't cover that in a weekend.
Really?
I mean, if you're riding the F train heading down to Coney Island, you're on the elevated rail, and you can just look down, and you're just passing that forever.
That's so
So
cool.
we went in, walked around for a little while. Also went in the cemetery up near Queens where Harry Houdini's buried, stuff like that. It just phenomenal, just walking around cemeteries like that.
Harry Houdini's still alive.
If you ever get a
Thanks.
chance to go down to Arlington and just be amazed, just walking the grounds and how hallowed those grounds are because of who's buried there and the reason why they're there. And then, of course, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier on top. And just to feel the presence of that site and what those individuals stood for and what they did.
So just a local tidbit for you from the history guy. A gentleman from Camden, New York, named Lorimer Rich, who was a very famous architect, was the man who designed the Arlington Tombs of the Unknown Soldiers. He designed a fourth one, which is also in Rome, New York, in which there's 13 Revolutionary War soldiers buried under that monument. That's not the official Revolutionary Unknowns. I believe that's in Virginia. I'm not sure where that is. But it is also the fourth one that Lorimer Rich designed as part of that series. So if you're a local person and you want to see that, it's in Rome, right across from the fort. Revere Copper and Brass made a special copper coffin. They put the remains of 13 people they found that they recovered during the restoration of the fort, and they're buried there. So there's a little plot of land there, and when we used to give walking tours, we would tell people, you probably don't realize this, but that fence denotes a cemetery there, and technically we shouldn't be on the ground right now at nighttime.
Mhm.
Oh, God, did I just break the law?
Yes, you did, Peter.
Would you guys ever buy a house that had a family cemetery on there?
Certainly.
Oh, did you?
My house actually has a family cemetery. It's not on the premises. It's about a quarter mile down the road, but there is a family plot with 3 stones, and 2 of them were age 7. One of them's age 21. But I know in one occasion at least is I saw the 7-year-old in my house.
Really?
Yeah. Just playing down in the basement, which is funny because the basement wasn't there when they lived in the house. But
That's very interesting.
Is he buried in the basement?
not
Is that
anymore.
why you see him
I
there?
mean, my grandparents bought the house in the 1930s, and they hand dug that basement.
Well, if the kid's dead, he's
Wow.
not going to know he's in the basement.
True.
My basement's like 8 feet tall, so I mean it's a deep basement. So if they buried him underneath the house, I mean, what did he do?
I know if you ever go to Kevin's house in the winter, they never shovel. You have to go in some little hole to get in through the basement.
I texted everybody and said, use the basement door. And here comes Pete and his wife trudging through the front yard.
14 feet of snow. Why
Not
didn't you
my
use the
fault.
basement, Pete? 'Cause I didn't read the message.
So, all right, let's move on to see and talk about what, Pete?
Oh,
You didn't do like trivia to start this. What's the difference between a cemetery and a graveyard?
One starts with C, one starts with a G.
Graveyards are attached to churches. Cemeteries are not.
Oh.
There you go.
I like that. Yes.
But
That's,
we're only talking
That
about
is an actual distinction, just so you know, but go ahead. I'm
Wow.
sorry.
that's cool. I didn't.
I didn't know
that.
the actual distinction, so apparently we can only talk about cemeteries tonight.
Graveyard.
I didn't know that.
I
I
would've put it-
spend too much time reading when I poop, so I mean, it's just like I'm always reading books on stupid stuff. And
And you tell us that now?
Well, yeah, we're live.
There's these series of books called the potty manuals, and they're like this thick, and you could read Love and Peace and all these books and stuff in like 5. Okay, go ahead.
Wait, can you send me the link? Cool.
While you're
It explains what the monopoly properties are. I mean, everything you need to know in
God.
lifetime. I mean,
I can get smarter and poo at this.
how long do you stay?
till the hemorrhoids hurt, and then you get up and you just.
Oh.
Don't you think is there something more you could do with
Pete's
your time?
back. No.
Pete, we have missed you.
Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Bye.
I was kind of thinking there's something more he could do with his time.
Well, if they had a reclining pooper, I mean, the napper crapper or something like that. I mean,
I don't know. Wouldn't that make it harder?
so
to crawl?
graveyards and
Graveyards and cemeteries. We would like to warn
Well, not if you
everybody,
eat enough
please do
fiber,
not
it'll
poop
soften
in
up.
cemeteries or
Yeah,
graveyards.
you thought of this.
I think I just lost my mind.
So,
now that I just steered you away.
let's move on. Let's talk about why everybody is here and listening tonight. Is they want to talk about spirits in cemeteries and graveyards.
Like drinking?
Yes.
Okay.
There's vodka. There's whiskey. But again, before we get into this, I want to really press: we do not condone anybody trespassing in that property. Do not go in the property past the restricted times, usually from dusk until dawn. And again, treat it with respect. That's what we're all about when it comes to past lives, is treating them with utter respect. So let's talk about spirits and ghosts in graveyards and cemeteries. Sorry, Pete.
Oh, it's
There's plenty of stories around here. I mean, there's plenty of stories all over the U.S. and the world. Let's talk about some cemeteries and graveyards around here that you might have heard stories about.
Well, you have one right here, St. Agnes. They've spoken about that with a fireman's statue that people have seen. If you look in its eyes, it seems to follow you wherever you go. I don't know if it's an old wives' tale or not. I've looked at the statue. It's a beautiful statue rendition. I don't really know if it follows me, but
I mean, personally, I'm not. I don't want to debunk it and kill everybody's spirit here. I mean, it is an artistic type thing called following eyes.
yeah.
Without looking at the statue and without looking up close, the way that they used to carve out pupils, and they still do, is conical shape, going into the
granite.
into the convex of the eye. And I mean, it basically gives the same effect like in the Haunted Mansion at Disney World and Disneyland, is where we have the statues that seem like they're watching you and turning their heads as you're going by. That's actually like a solid block, and they're carved inward. And that's what causes that effect, is the lighting.
Nice.
But along with that cemetery, I mentioned it to you earlier, there was a death back in, I believe it was the 50s. There was a girl who went missing. She was a younger girl, probably 8, 9 years old. And they ended up finding her body stuffed into a culvert in front of the cemetery. And there's been stories that she has been seen in the area.
A lot of the cemeteries do have, energy is energy.
Mhm.
If you can haunt a house, if you can haunt anything, why couldn't you haunt a cemetery? If you don't know that you're dead and you're still there, why can't that happen? As people tell me, they see things moving in a cemetery, they see lights in a cemetery. Why couldn't it be?
Very well could be. And I mean, one thing that we've always talked about, let's see, a death, a funeral. Everybody goes to the plot, they watch the body be lowered down in the ground, and usually that is a very rough and emotional time right there. So you've got a lot of sadness, anger type emotions that is in these cemeteries. What are the stones made out of?
Granite? Limestone?
All of them have been very big conductors of energy and can retain energy. So that's a very good possibility. Now let's throw in some metaphysical stuff. Pete's talked before about how the the spirit remains, what is it, 2 weeks, Pete, after death?
They believe up to 21 days
21
you
days.
can stay before the light makes you go into it.
Mhm.
Or now you're trapped. Not my belief. That's just what other people are saying. I don't.
So
I haven't experienced it yet, so I can't confirm that on like a professional level. But
You didn't find this out when you were in the bathroom?
never had that kind of experience yet.
Oh,
but-
out of body?
I mean, it was that time with the long hots. It came close, but
So basically, what I'm getting with that was, if the spirit's still here, and it's usually the time to, make your amends, type of thing before you cross over into the light. If you're going to your own funeral, and you're seeing this much emotion and all this and that, maybe you're having second guesses about I don't want to leave, but you're around all of these high energy type stones. Could that be another thing that helps keep them down here and traps them?
and earlier stones were limestone.
Yep.
A former guest that we've had on from season 1, his belief is that it's a two-way door. Like it's not a permanent closure
Mhm.
if they choose to come back. If you've studied any like cemetery lore, cemeteries had a different meaning in the 17 and 1800s versus today. Families would actually go there and picnic. I mean,
Yes.
where we think stuff like that's grotesque or weird, they would bring their family there. That was something they did. I mean, you think about that now, it's like, I'm not going to go eat McDonald's there in the thing. It's just, you're going to have a picnic in the cemetery. So, I mean, I could
would
see where
not.
there's a possibility where family who've been deceased could come through, could pass back on because there is a reason for them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they
I don't
had-
ever want to get into the negative aspect of it too, but if something's prowling for energy, like Kevin had said, most of these ceremonies involve a lot of emotion. Things that are attracted to negative emotions are also attracted to places like this,
Mhm.
which is another reason you have to be careful when you're there.
And that brings up our other contact that had a possession occur.
And like I said, I've especially the one in Rome. I go there at least once a month and walk it. I mean, it's a good, nice, brisk walk.
Mhm.
There's a lot of nice things. There's a pond, but whoever devised the idea of putting this tower in there that just randomly starts playing church music out of the blue at like 190 decibels, like you're just taking a walk and everything's nice, and next thing you hear Amazing Grace and you just pooped and like the ducks are flying everywhere, and it's like,
You do that a lot.
good for you. You came up with a good idea.
This is in Rome?
Yes.
Really?
I think, what do they call it, the contillion or something? There's like a man-made lake. And then they have benches you could sit around the lake with the ducks. And then just randomly, I don't think it works properly. So that's like, it's like cutting out and then cut back in. It's like, it's like, might as well just put a fire department quick call in there. I mean, spice it up a little. But
Trying to wake the dead.
we could only do that. Now again, there's a person online who has a lot of YouTube videos using a spirit portal who films in cemeteries and talks to every spirit on the planet.
Oh.
You got to be careful with that kind of stuff too. You guys were mentioning, I'm not trying to hijack you here. You guys were also mentioning like, was it Vermont with the headstones?
Mhm.
I believe it may have been one of those companies during the Civil War. Affluent families could pay $150 and have their son's face actually put on the statue if they were killed in battle. So a lot of these, I don't know of any around here that were done, but I've seen a few in Boston where you go there and there's like a little soldier monument on a grave. That's actually the face of the soldier that
Was killed.
died. The family had enough money back then to pay for it.
Well, they also paid to have their, during the Civil War, to have their relative embalmed and sent home. Because a lot of the bodies were not embalmed. They were just sent home on the death trains. And then the death trains were requested not to come through their villages because of the odor. So that was stopped. And they were buried at locations where they were killed.
So another quickie.
Uh-oh.
Another trivia thing. I find this stuff fascinating. That's why I'm glad you had me come on for the cemetery stuff. I was just dying to get in on this conversation. But stop me before I kill again. When you go through a cemetery, is there a way of telling if people were rich or not?
Usually by the size of the stone.
And also what the
Location.
stone is made of?
No.
Yes, because if the stones were aluminum, and there's a few of them in Forest Hill Cemetery, aluminum was worth more than gold back in the day. So those monuments usually dictated that person was extremely wealthy.
Well, they were
We look at it
sold.
today, it's nothing, but
But they were sold from Sears and Roebuck. The aluminum stones were sold.
Were
from,
they?
Yes. Through
the
catalog.
freaking geology teacher lied to us. I'm coming to talk to you. I'm
Why
coming to talk
would,
to you.
why would he be talking about an aluminum
I'm
stone?
coming for you. You see that? Now I'm...
Here, Pete. I'll help you out here.
See, and he gave me the whole thing. He said, oh, no, Napoleon's dinner set was made of aluminum. That was worth more than gold back there. See, I should have looked that up. That's what you get for trusting a teacher.
Don't trust teachers. I think that was the.
I can,
So you could get it at Sears and the Roebuck, just like you could buy a coffin today through to Walmart. So
Right.
I can tell you it's not true today because my whole truck's made out of aluminum.
Right.
I'm not rich.
there was a cost differential until they figured out, in actually Clinton, New York, when they discovered the mineral bauxite, I believe it was, where they were able to refine aluminum a lot easier than it was in the 1700s. So I apologize, and I'm coming to talk to you, Mr. Geology. I'm coming for you.
I want my gravestone made out of aluminum foil.
It's probably all I could afford today. I mean,
How do you guys
just keep
feel
all that
about-
chewing gum and...
How do you guys feel about like your face on a gravestone or faces in general? When you like go through a cemetery, seeing faces like Forever Cemetery in California, everyone's face is on the gravestone, and
Depends on how
kinda
they put
creeps
it on.
me a little bit. Yeah.
If they put it on with a ceramic photograph, the problem with that is a lot of times they break. And if you laser it into the stone, they stay there longer, forever.
Does it creep you out though?
It doesn't bother me at all.
You're talking to the guy that's actually down in the
I know.
living room with him.
I don't know. Maybe that's a thing, right? He's like, I can handle anything, but faces on gravestones, it's where I draw the
Oh,
line.
God. He was just laying on the table, but that face on the gravestone, that's it for me.
So you get my sick humor. I want to get one of those flicker ones now so I could change his issue.
See, what I want is I want the old gravestone with the ringer on it, but I want it mechanical, so it just does it on its own every once in a while.
The ringer?
Yeah, how it's got the
Let me get you
The
the
bell?
massage,
the
Joe.
I'm not
The
dead
bell,
bell.
yes.
Oh, yeah,
my
that's-
God. The ringer.
That had the little tube going down with a little...
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Until the wind blew and everybody was alive.
Yep.
Oh my God, you just gave me something for a movie. Never mind.
Oh, God, no.
I just want to let you know that I think Travis just came up with an idea for a T-shirt for you called the Out of Potty Experience.
Oh my God.
Copyright 2021, Roman Empire Productions.
He also said shit's getting real.
Oh, you know it.
I wonder.
The honey was delicious, by the way. Thank you.
So speaking of like Forest Hill Calvary, let's go a little bit of celebrity background. Pete, you're talking about a celebrity in the area that got a possible idea.
Oh, see, when you were talking celebrity, I thought you were talking about Asia Gray. Asia Gray, the well-known guy who collected rock thingies. What do they call them? The Earth people. They play with stones. Geologists.
You just yelled
He's
about
buried there. He's got
Rock
his
people.
So you go right in Forest Hill.
It's like this
So
is
the-
a Star Trek episode, isn't it? The Rock people.
The same geology teacher, brings us into the cemetery with hydrochloric acid all over the grave. See, it's not reacting. That's granite. You did that to Asia Gray, the guy who invented rocks.
He invented rocks.
He invented rocks.
That's ironic.
Okay, I'm
Huh?
So apparently, Stephen King lived in Utica at some point for a couple of years. And allegedly, as the story goes, if you go far enough back in Forest Hill Cemetery, there's a grouping of children's graves that are arranged in a circle. That is, again, loosely from what I've heard. This is what Pet Cemetery was based on. I have no corroboration of that. I've seen he's even denied it online, but that's just one of the local stories out there that people make up and push. And
I believe it.
And once people around here make things up, there's no change in their mind. It's, no, it happened. Stephen King said it didn't. Who the hell does he know?
Same thing. I brought it up earlier that supposedly he was living at the Hotel Utica too, and he wrote part of The Shining in Hotel Utica.
Really?
So cool.
I mean, Hotel Utica's got its own stories. Don't
Yeah.
ask him about the 13th floor because they'll say it doesn't exist. But
But was he here as Stephen King or Richard Bachman?
Who?
His alternate ego.
yeah, I know. That's what I mean.
Okay.
Who?
Who? Doctor Who? So there's a Calvary cemetery there? I've never heard of this Calvary. I've been in Forest.
I thought there was Calvary too.
There's New Forest Cemetery, there's Forest Hill, and then there's Calvary Cemetery.
Yeah.
Because Forest actually has a lot of well-known history figures in it.
Yes.
If you start going in there, they're actually names you've heard about in school, maybe. I don't know.
There's
If you had
a
the same
vice
teachers
president.
I did, maybe not. But
There's a vice president who's buried there.
the guy who invented rocks.
Yes. There's a few admirals that are there. There's a Medal of Honor recipient buried there.
I have his photo.
Who?
James Gridley, Civil War colonel from the 146th New York. Kevin had an ancestor in the regiment, so I paid a lot of money for that.
Yeah.
25 bucks, Candy.
He's actually buried in Rome.
Who is? Your-
My ancestor. He actually
Civil War?
died. He died on Kent Street in Rome. He actually lived for 40 years with a musket ball lodged in his eye socket.
Oh,
Yeah, he fought at many battles. He's fought at Gettysburg. He fought at the Wilderness battles. He's fought at, oh my God, all of them. Antietam. And the last battle he fought at where he was discharged was Fredericksburg. That's where he caught the musket ball.
So you want to talk about the intestinal fortitude? Is that a word, or did I make that up? Is it intesticle or
I don't know.
intestinal?
intestinal.
Intestinal.
Yes.
So at the Battle of the Wilderness, the 146th New York, where Kevin's relative was in, was raised out of Rome. It was composed of soldiers from Oneida County. They were the lead attack regiment at the Battle of the Wilderness. There were about 630 men that led the charge in, and within 2 minutes, they suffered over 70% casualties. That battle was so bad it was over in less than 5 minutes. Many of them actually were just left on the battlefield, and they were burned to death because they set the forest on fire with all the cannon fire, the gunfire. That was a horrific battle. I don't think there were more than 200 people left battle ready after that in that regiment. So that was like the worst of the worst for that particular regiment. And then they gave them the honor to actually be at least surrender at Appomattox. That was like their honor for what they did through. Oh, since we keep talking military, battlefields are technically a cemetery. While they did their best to extract as many bodies as they could, many of them were just buried where they dropped. Oriskany battlefield around here is considered to be one of them. Mm-hmm. From accounts I've read, that there were bodies still out there 3 months after the battle. Like, I don't know who buried them or if they just left them there and nature did its thing and the animals.
A lot of accounts I read, it was a lot of farmers and villagers just kind of picked them up and they took it from there. But I mean, that whole thing with the, I don't know, it was kind of like they called a retreat, but it wasn't really a retreat because it was just a miscommunication type thing. But I mean, they were, a lot of them were chased a few miles away and killed. So I mean, you could be 3 miles away from the battle and somebody kills you, but nobody knows that you were there because you're the only body within 3 miles. So who knows?
So to set you up for your segue photo,
Yep.
Oriskany battlefield. We had the idea one time, the battle was fought on August 6th. We didn't go in the morning because the Oneida Indians and Fort Stanwix, they usually do a commemoration event. The Oneidas actually leave food at the monument for all of the warriors that were killed, and you're not allowed to touch that food. Apparently, they consume the energy of it. I believe they recover it after it and bury it or burn it or something.
They usually bury it after as a commemoration, and it absorbs into the earth.
So not to get involved with any of that, we went about 5 o'clock, and a technique we used to do is something called era cues, E-R-A, time era. So I was walking around, I had my camera bag, and there was nobody there. There were like 4 of us who were doing an impromptu investigation. And I started calling out that my name is Walrath. I'm the surgeon from Fort Stanwix. Gansevoort sent me. Boys, does anybody need help? Does anyone need help? Does anyone want rum or water? I'm a surgeon. I will never forget when I felt the hand grab me right on the ankle, and that burst of cold went right up my leg through my spine, and I'm like, oh, God.
Mm-hmm.
So I may have been standing where someone had passed because that generated some kind of energy. So that's something we need to start getting back into, the era stuff.
Yeah.
Like we did a lot of that at the Hulbert and a lot of...
I could definitely tell you that Oriskany has a lot of energy. As Pete said, that is the only place I've actually felt a touch, like an actual touch, like he's saying. It's cold. It basically feels like when your foot falls asleep, but super cold. And it was right on my forearm. I've seen silhouettes in the trees that were peeking out from behind and then dodge back behind it. I've heard musket fire in the distance. And I mean, it was musket fire. It's the pop with the fizz. It's not like shotgun rifles today where it's just a
Right.
and I mean, it's just a great experience to be there. Again, when we were there, we had complete permission. We were permitted to be there. If you trespass there and you are caught, you will receive a ticket for trespassing on federal property. I can tell you from experience.
Yes.
There was a bad time in my life, but I grew up and I was actually able to obtain a permit after that.
It's the federal government. All you got to do is pay a lot of money and have someone babysit you for 5 or 6 hours at a lot of money, and you can do whatever you want there.
So another great thing, we've probably talked about this about the show before, but when I actually did the investigation at the Oriskany battlefield, the rangers that were there with us asked us as part of the permit that if we capture any kind of evidence, then they would like a copy of the evidence and where we actually captured it. And the reason for that is they're trying to actually locate where the battle actually happened based on paranormal evidence.
Ooh, cool.
That's the only way they can really do it, besides digging, and they don't want to go and dig and disrupt the ground. So with paranormal groups going in, doing the investigation, if you're getting a lot of stuff in one spot and they can pinpoint it on a map, they're trying to find the original path, the original trail that ran through there. There's some skeptics that think that it's right where 69 is, but a lot believe it's actually further down into the woods, closer to where the canals are.
Yes, the park that they purchased is a park that they purchased. That was the only land available in 1877. I'm not even sure that's Herkimer's Tree that they call Herkimer's Tree. At some point, the Barge Canal and the Mohawk River intersect now.
Mm-hmm.
Since they were coming down by Bateau and they'd sent Herkimer back up to German Flats by Bateau, I'm assuming the battle was a lot closer to the water. Part of Route 69 is what they called the Old Military Road, and it was a corduroy road, what they called it. So it was basically wooden logs that were just tamped into the ground. Actually, the Rome Historic Society has one of those logs. It's not on display. So they do know there was a road recovered there. How true it is to Route 69, I don't know. But again, anytime I've ever been there, the energy is always on the other side of the monument, going towards the tree line, going towards the river, never towards the road,
That's
and where they
actually
call the ambush area.
That's where I saw the silhouette. That's where I felt the touch. But we do have a piece of evidence that was captured just in front of where the monument is, just past Herkimer's Tree. We show this at a few of our events, but we'll show this one here now. So the original photograph was taken approximately 15 to 20 feet back from the foliage that you're looking at right now. If you actually look at the mist, it's on the opposite side of the foliage, approximately 5-10 feet past the foliage. So it's not breath. Nobody's smoking, because we don't allow that on our investigations. But if you look into it, You can kind of see a tricorn hat, a head, his shoulders, his. It looks like he's kind of got cross sashes, but he's also cradling a long rifle.
I could totally see that. I saw it before you even
Yep.
described it. That's amazing.
And-
You want me to tell you what that is, though? That's actually the uniform design of what they call a frontier coat back then. All the militia didn't have a continental uniform with the facings, but they did have an open, what looked like doctor's frock with the wide lapels, which you can absolutely see at the top coming to a V, where he would have had like a buckskin belt, which probably would have had another powder horn across
Yep.
this way, and then the other one would have been the bullets. So that's, you can absolutely see.
There's a set
That
of eyes.
design.
There's a set of eyes behind the rifle. Look closely.
This, I don't know what it is.
No, be up higher.
No, I know.
I was thinking it was like a leg. Maybe he like had his leg up and like was doing something with
Like
a gun.
inside that mist on the outside. I mean, you can matrix a lot out of that.
No, you can see
Kind
it.
of start seeing things.
No, you can actually see someone's head behind him. If you look closely, where the rifle is,
Yeah, I can see. Kind of,
right
yeah.
there,
Oh yeah, okay.
there's someone behind him.
For those who don't know, we just pointed at it. We're like,
Like
yeah,
I
right
said.
there.
I mean, I've never noticed. I've had this photo since 2007. So,
That's the best evidence I think I've seen ever, to be honest.
and from a paranormal theory aspect, everyone knows ectoplasmic mist, which is this fog type mist. The theory behind that is that ectoplasmic mist is the energy coming together or breaking apart when an apparition is either coming together or breaking apart. So we actually believe that this photo here is we caught it as it's either coming together or breaking apart because we have the mist around it.
That is really epic. I wonder if it would do any good to have like a drone with like a thermal camera and just kind of like scan the grounds. If
I
that
don't know.
would,
We can ask Travis if we could strap his cell phone to a drone and
right?
fly it over the top.
Because when you said they were trying to figure out where the battle was and stuff, I was like, oh, that would be kind of cool to just kind of go over everything and be like, there's one.
I think if you
there's one.
just, I think it just, if you start walking, if we can get permission to go in there,
Well, I mean, you don't have to go there at night either. I mean,
you could just walk.
yeah, we
Even
could
if
just
it's
go there and walk
daylight.
when it opens. It May 1st, I believe it opens, or is it April 1st?
Should be open, well, officially probably May 30th, whenever Memorial Day is.
Travis said we can't strap his phone with a thermal on the drone.
Aw.
Oh, that's not
Travis.
nice.
Come on, Travis. Live dangerously.
Although I drove, now that you mention it, I drove by a couple days ago. The gate was open, so
Mhm.
it must be open as far as.
They're probably in there trying to clean up a little bit,
Mhm.
check things over.
So safely, if the gate's closed, you can't go in.
I mean, since I've done this, I haven't been able to obtain a permit. It's definitely a little bit harder. The ranger that was in charge of it then was a lot more open to the paranormal. I'm not sure today. It's probably closer to what we had to do before with getting into Fort Stanwix, which was you actually had to pay hourly for the
Rangers.
ranger to actually be there to babysit you.
Wow.
And it's whatever day they want to do it, not what day you want to do it.
Right.
I would love to go back there.
I don't think I've
What,
ever
Fort
fished there.
Stanwix? Well, I'm talking about.
No, I mean for an
Really?
investigation.
So
That'd be fun.
Going back to cemeteries.
we're
Go
still on that.
Okay. I wasn't sure if Pete was
How about
taking it.
No,
connection to
no.
this? This
Huh?
is-
He had a
this-
photo.
This is underneath the same level with the forest rangers and everything. Is we have another famous cemetery within the area. The cemetery, which is the landmark of Baron von Steuben,
Mm-hmm.
who's up in Rumson area.
Remsen.
So the whole
You
story.
mean Stu Ben's not buried in Stu Ben?
No,
Stu Ben's in Rumson.
no, he went north of Steuben. He overshot.
A lot of land.
Kevin owns most of it.
Pete, why don't you tell us a little bit about Baron von Steuben?
I don't know who he is.
He's the guy that overshot Steuben.
Stu Ben was a very flamboyant German mercenary who came and he trained the American troops on how to kick some ass, and we won the revolution, and he settled up in this county, and he apparently didn't live in his own town. He moved to Remsen. So So where it comes in with Kevin, one of his aide-de-camps, Captain Walker, and then I can't remember for the life of me the other captain. There were two of them. The other one settled in Utica, who has also worked with Washington, I believe. Both of them were on Washington staff with. So he was basically just a German mercenary, came here. He wasn't a Baron or a Von. I don't actually think Steuben was his last name, if I remember that correctly. But him and the guy who's got the statue over here, Kashmir Pulaski. So he probably didn't even settle in Pulaski. He probably went to West Leiden. I don't know. My whole world's upheaval tonight.
Well, anyways,
bring everybody into. You got to go to the Star Hill if that's where you're going. I don't.
Well, I'm still at Baron von Steuben because his burial area is actually said to be haunted as well. It is believed that he is up there because the whole idea was, being as flamboyant as he was, he also hated women. The whole idea for him being buried way up in the middle of nowhere was, this is coming. This is not me. Don't attack me. This came from the ranger. The ranger told me this. She said that he hated women so much that he wanted to be buried in the middle of nowhere where no woman could come and visit him.
Wow. He was actually thrown out of the German army for that. That's what led to that. But.
Yeah. He was a homosexual, if you couldn't get what we were putting down. And that's one of his things about hating women and everything. But the ranger at the time, she was telling me, she was trying to invite us to go up and do an investigation up there. We never got up there. And she really held that against him. And she says, I'm in charge of his gravesite and he hates it. So every time I'm up there, something's happening and I'm just nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So I really do want to get up there, do an investigation. It's something that we can visit during the day. Bring all of our female investigators and really tick them off, and maybe we can get some.
The females.
So the cabin is a reproduction.
Yeah.
The stone grave is there. However, Rome has his horse carriage, eyeglasses, and I believe sword. So if you wanted first class relics that he might be attached to. Now, there was a fascinating story, too. We did an investigation at the Rome Historic Society. Years ago, when they dug the fort up, they discovered a few native bodies, and they just kept it in boxes and gave it to the Rome Historic Society. Long story short, it belonged to the Onondaga tribe, and the gentleman who used to let us into the Cam Roden Church there was one of the ones. They had to bring the remains up to the tribe. It was like at midnight, and they did this special burial ceremony. Mm-hmm. And they used to say the collection room down there was as hot as hell as far as, like, things happen. Well, of course, you have disturbed native remains. And even when we did the investigation there was a little weird vibe. So you never know where you're going to find bones. I mean, it's not a place where you think you would find bodies, but...
Didn't that just happen last year? It was Hamilton College or something? Had the remains of Oneida warriors, and they just gave them back to the Oneidas?
Wow.
Yeah. It becomes a very large... removal. They have to have a Native American there doing their service as they remove the remains for identification purposes, and then the recipients, whoever they belong to, do a full service for them also. Mm-hmm. It's very drawn out.
So, I mean, it's a fascinating subject. I mean, I'm sure people out there listening are like, what? Like, there's a lot of things you don't know that's involved in death after it happens. It's
a lot of paperwork has to be done. I mean, you don't know exactly who they are, but you want to make sure your permits are in. You want to make sure that everybody involved is involved with it properly. And when you start to disrupt any remains, you want to make sure that there's a medical examiner or someone involved in case it's not an old gravesite. Like someone didn't just bury somebody there amongst old remains.
Mm-hmm. So if Kevin will allow me to toot our horn here.
Mm-hmm.
Toot.
So you say, how the hell is a paranormal investigation team involved with like cemetery work or something? So years ago, we had the privilege of being the first and only group on the Fort Bull property. One of the side missions we had there, they don't know where Fort Bull was. There's a stone there, but that means absolutely nothing. So they called us in, and we ended up making a public event out of it, and they used the money, and now they have a shed out there and some stuff that they use for historical interpretation. But the few nights we were out there, we're pretty sure we have an idea of where the fort was, because while nothing was happening in all the sites where people thought the fort was, where we guessed it was, we were starting to get some type of activity. Now, if you go in the woods back there, in the middle of nowhere, there's a 300-year-old tree. It's so out of place to everything around it, and it's been hit by lightning. It's like the scariest thing you've ever seen. It looks like it's out of a horror movie. It's been hit by lightning. It's regrown. It's got things, and it's just... And then if you go slightly up, I don't know, maybe what was it, 20, 30 feet? It looks like there's a natural pathway that was cut through the woods, and we're like, oh, I would almost bet that was the road from Wood Creek right up to the fort. I'll guarantee you when they buried, and then there was an expedition right after the fort was destroyed where 500 people have died through the winter season there, and they're buried someplace out on the property. Nobody knows where the bodies were. Pretty sure we know where it is. I'm pretty sure that's what the tree was. The tree was a marker so that when they came through, if they ever had to find the bodies or they were going to do something, the British were going to actually earmark where it was. The tree was the marker, and I will guarantee that is where it was. Because at one point, we were getting battle on the spirit box. And like Kevin's saying, you're not talking somebody with a hunting rifle. You could actually hear the flint scraping. You'd hear like lock, that slow fizz, boom, pop, and it was Mike's brother, right? Mike's brother started with the Syracuse. He started speaking Scottish like he was with the Blackwater Regiment that was there, and then all of a sudden French voices are coming over the spirit box. We've tuned into something around this tree. We're like, if we had to like give a professional opinion.
And I mean, the night we did that event, it was just crazy because I've never seen a glowworm around here ever in my life. Right? I've lived in this area for 34 years. I've never seen a glowworm in real life.
Yeah, I've either.
We're at that tree, and we started seeing little lights off near that trail that Pete was talking about, that natural trail. So I start following it. I'm telling everyone, I'm seeing orbs in the woods. You know, I'm seeing orbs with my eyes. This is something. So I start following it, and the light dies out, and there's another one, and it's going along this natural trail, and I finally find one, and it's a glowworm. But these glowworms were only glowing up that natural trail.
Ooh, cool.
So could it be a coincidence? Absolutely.
I think not.
But it was pointing towards everything we were looking for that night.
I know it was in their future to go back in with ground penetrating radar once the grants and stuff were finalized. So I hope that's an area they concentrate. I'm just curious to see if that matches up with what we were interpreting. I mean, granted, we're there for entertainment, but
we worked on the side. Pete sent me a map, and I kind of overlaid, and we were kind of figuring out areas.
So yes, as paranormal investigators can have some use now and then, occasionally. So before you end, you got to talk about that chair up on the. I've never been up to that cemetery. I tried finding it once, and I ended up in Steuben. And what is it? Well, there's Carmichael and Star, right? There's two separate.
Yeah, I don't know.
Where the guy dragged somebody and they died, and if you sit in a chair, you poop your pants and die 13 years later in a car accident or something.
Potato Hill is where the
Bernie
murder
Hatch.
occurred. I'm not sure if there actually is just a paranormal story attached to that or not. There's Star Hill, in which everyone sees the lantern, and that was actually a doctor who ride his carriage up the hill. That has been seen on many occasions. My parents have actually told me they've seen it because the snowmobile trails go over Star Hill, and there's many snowmobilers who have witnessed the light going up the hill. There's a rocking chair that used to be in the graveyard. Yeah, if you're like the 10th person to sit in the chair, you're gonna die or something.
That was my favorite story. One of these events where, oh my God, my cousin sat in that chair and he died. What happened? Oh, he was in a car accident 18 years later. I'm like, I'm pretty sure if it was the chair, he would have died going home that night.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
That's fair.
I mean, I don't know too much about it. I've never actually been up there.
It had something to do with a sailor, right? Or something. That was his chair, and he got mad if you sat in his chair. But the chair's not there anymore because people were partying. And
Yeah. I mean, I've heard stories where they burned the chair after one party, and then they went up there the next day, and the chair was still there.
and if the chair's not there, you're going to die. Like, if
Yeah.
you can't see it, it's...
There's all those kind of fun stories. But definitely, before we end it, I definitely want to have Vinny talk about his experience in, was it Auburn?
Mm-hmm. We moved to cemetery, and the cemetery was on private property, and they asked a contract to move it. So we moved it, and we found 186 people deceased. So we moved it, and we had talked to the homeowner. And before we go into a cemetery to do anything like that, we do ask everybody who's working to come together, and we'll ask St. Michael to watch over us. And the reason why is because St. Michael is more powerful than any evil. And you never know what you're going to find. And I'm a firm believer of that. And be Michael as a group, the guys who are working with me, to please harm us in any way, and no one can follow you home. That's a very big thing for me. I talked to the landowners, and I said, really you should have someone come and bless the house. Nobody wanted to talk about it. They didn't really believe in it. They're not really super religious. First week, nothing really happened. Second week, refrigerator doors opening and closing, cabinet doors opening and closing. Just the basic stuff begins. By the third week, the child is having a new visitor. Knows the name, knows what the guy looks like. Do some research, find out there is such a person. Person was in prison. Person was a child killer. It is important that you realize, I'm giving you a very quick story because we only have a few minutes left.
Todd's okay. He's
That
never
never
playing on his
stopped us.
phone.
But we really want to make sure that, when you start looking into things like this, you realize you're not dealing with just what you see. It's things that you don't see. And if you're in a cemetery that you're not prepared for what can come at you, it will. If you don't have your thoughts together, and if you just say it's not a big deal and your strength is not with you, I don't care if you're in a haunted house. If you're involved with such a thing, and you don't take every precaution, as this family did not, they called a priest. Priest had to come to the house. Why? Because an entity is in your home. We moved all these people. Not one of us was affected. My people. And I'm here to tell you, I've moved multiple cemeteries. I moved one from Revolutionary War era. What we found were things that you would not understand, because when we started moving them, we found leather pieces. We found shoes. The bone structure was gone because it was so old, but that's a different cemetery. But we still found pieces of their clothing. And I look at the stone, 1810. How would that last that long? Buckles, like shoe buckles. We're looking at these things, and I'm like, well, we'll put them all into a nice casket, which we did. We put everything into a casket. And on the top of all their caskets said one thing: known but to God. Because we didn't know who these people were. The other one was a state contract. Move them on behalf of the state. sent to another facility for burial. They didn't know who they had back there. You know, someone buys a piece of property. Most of the property in New York State is old. There's people buried in people's backyards you never even thought of.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, by your house you have a cemetery.
Yeah. Actually, there's 2 cemeteries, same family, but
Two
like
different
brothers.
locations.
Yep.
I was out hunting one day and I found a graveyard on a piece of property that nobody thought there was a cemetery. There's very few headstones, but the woods took it back. We walked in, we kicked off some of the leaves off the headstones to see how old it was.
Mhm.
It was from 1900, but it's still there.
It's like the cemetery that was found just off of River Road, behind Riverside Mall, right at the corner of Cosby.
Yeah.
It's like just on the other side of the chain link fence. They found that it was like what, late 90s?
Yep. I mean, and these are things that you start disrupting, and you'll find somebody who is saying, I'm still here. You saw a little boy in your basement?
Mm-hmm.
They found a man in their house. I mean, okay, you're saying, well, the refrigerator door opened and closed. Big deal. Well, 20 times is a big deal. The magnet in your door doesn't just stop, you know? And when we're looking at things like this, you know, you're in there, that's their area now.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Gettysburg, my son and I. We wanted to go ghost hunting at night. I didn't realize that the gates close at dark. Well, I happened to be driving around, and I'm talking to, I see these people pull up. I said, you here for the same reason? They're like, what's that? I said, well, because the ghosts coming down Spangler Spring. I'm like, we're night security. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll leave now. And the guy goes, no, you could stay for a few minutes. We'd like to talk to you. And I'm looking around going, oh, okay. They found out what I do for a living and where I've been, and they're going to give me some answers. And I says, is there like fireworks going on around here someplace? Is there some noises I should be knowing about? I says, because I can hear stuff. They're like, oh, I think you're going crazy, huh? Yeah. And I'm hearing cannon fire, literally cannon fire. And the guy goes, yeah, we hear it every night. I'm like, you do? He goes, yeah, we do. He goes, and we see things every night. He goes, but we're going to have to lead you out of here because you can't be part of it. It's not open to the public. So they take you away from the battlefields. But they do tell you some of the stories that they've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Union soldier sitting on a rock looking over the battlefield. Or the voices of the 2 Confederate soldiers who were at the sniper. And they could hear them talking about their snipers. And they're talking about the next shot. I'm listening to these 2 guys like, are you guys kidding me? Oh no, we got the voice recorders. They put the voice activated recorders there at night. And next morning they went back and retrieved it. And it was wintertime, so nobody was up there. They retrieved the voice recorders and there's voices on it. And that is a cemetery because they still find remains popping up from the ground every once in a while.
Just like the music we heard when we were down there.
And do not ever take anything off of a national park battlefield. They will come after you with the RICO Act and take everything you own. I know I subscribe to and read many Civil War publications. Ooh, look, a bullet. And guess what? Now they own your RV, your house, and everything you own. They've done it many times. What's on that battlefield stays on the battlefield.
The RICO Act?
Yeah, they've...
Organized crime?
Yeah.
You don't look like you're organized crime.
I'm trying to. I'd love to bring it back. I don't know. I'm willing to,
He's
you
from
know.
the Italian part of Rome, so.
Oh, okay.
River Street.
Just a quick Gettysburg. Did you ever... The most profound thing I ever had happen there was the time my dad brought me the first time in 1990s, a phenomena called acoustic shadowing, where you can't hear any sound. And this was in the Culp's Hill area. Now, Culp's Hill was the only part of the battlefield that was engaged nonstop for the entire 3 days battle. That was the hill that was guarding the road to Washington. So if that fell, they had clear shot right into Washington, 60 minutes. And what it is, you can see cars driving by, you can see people talking, but you can't hear the birds. You can't hear the car driving. You can't hear your dad's talking to me. You're just like deaf. It's just
No noise.
Oh.
and it's a phenomenon on battlefields called acoustic shadowing. That phenomena actually dated back to the battle. That's part of what fell apart on the second day. Back then, they used to fight the battle by sound, move to the guns. The general never went to support the attack that was going on because he didn't hear the guns.
Really?
And I'm like, did I experience that? Now, scientifically, they explain it. It's based on terrain and waves and this and that, and it can be affected with weather and this and that. But if you read like the accounts of the battle, like when Pickett's charge opened up, when they had the initial cannon blast, it blew windows out in Washington, it blew windows out in Pittsburgh, 200 or 300 miles away. People were hearing the cannons going off. The soldiers on the battlefield didn't hear anything. Or people are walking around and blood's pouring out of their ears, but nobody can hear the sound. But 200 miles away, they're hearing everything that's going on the battlefield. That was like the weirdest thing I've ever encountered there. And then just snap of a finger, birds chirping, you hear the bus going by, people talking.
Whoa.
You went deaf for a second.
It was about 30 seconds, but yeah.
Wow.
Well, they show videos of the soldiers walking. I was watching one of the shows, and it is a cemetery.
Yep.
And the cars are driving by, and you see what you would assume is recreators, because they're walking along the roadways, and you're assuming until you see them walk into the woods and they're not there. But it must be like a residual thing where every day they're doing the same thing.
I would love to own a house out there. Like, I didn't give Kevin the picture. Original houses that were out there, they have bronze plaques on them that say July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 1863. That means that building was there during the battle, before or after and whatever. There are obviously going to be activity in these houses. This is where they get you with all the ghost tours out there. If you're going to pay for a ghost tour out there, make sure the building they bring you into has a plaque on it. Because if that building had a plaque on it, it was probably a hospital. Whether they tell you it was or wasn't, it was a hospital. If that building was there during the battle, it was a hospital. You had 34,000 casualties. They weren't all out in the rain. I mean, just saying. That's what people are, I don't know. There's no history of my house. If you got the plaque, you got the spirits, probably.
Well, they showed the hotel where the area where Lee, it was his encampment. There's a hotel there, and they say it's one of the most haunted places in Gettysburg because it's his area.
And my favorite was when they were making the movie Gettysburg. You'd read some of the stories, and I think Stephen Lang was one of them.
Yep.
Where did the soldiers come up to him and hand him ammunition, Kevin? Was he the one? Like, they came out of nowhere. The two guys rode up to him, gave him a handful of ammunition. Then he turned around, and there's like nobody in the field. And
I'm not sure about that. I did hear that happen at one point during the filming. That actually was on an Unsolved Mystery episode. I could tell you that because I own all the ghost ones. But when they were filming Gettysburg, there was a few incidents where there was like a woman who would give, like, the actors would always need a ride into town so they can go to the store or something, get something to drink, get something to eat, something like that. So people who lived in town, if they were driving by, had a pickup truck, they'd tell them hop in the back. And there was one story of the woman drove a truck full of people into town, dropped them off at the gas station. They all get out of the back. She's driving down the road. She looks in her rearview mirror, and there's still two soldiers sitting in the back of her truck. So she pulls over and turns around. There's no one in the back of her truck.
Yes.
So, the hitch and a ride part.
And people were like sleeping in their tents, and they'd hear horses riding up and commotion, and they'd come out of their tent, and because they're actually tenting on the battlefield as they were filming that. So they're hearing all types of things, and there's nobody there.
Well, I think we're just about out of time for this one. I definitely think that we can head back into this and
This
do another
episode was to
discussion
die for.
with-
No, I'm just.
oh my god, an out of potty experience. So I think we could definitely come back and talk about cemeteries and graveyards again on a future episode. Maybe
We're
we'll
going to talk about potties again.
we have to.
No, I
Oh.
won't. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
he's going
Goes
to
hand in
leave.
hand.
I was all confused. I'm sorry.
So would the World Trade Center site complex be considered a cemetery? Before we close out, would we consider that an active open cemetery?
I would probably. I
Well,
don't believe they got all the bodies.
I would say
they're
it's,
still
I'm just
finding
asking for.
bodies in buildings.
yeah, the Deutsche Bank still has some.
Yeah.
There's areas in the buildings that they can't get to.
Yeah.
I would consider a very hallowed ground, and I would consider it a cemetery. But a lot of people are saying, well, it's room clean, but you know what? There's still that emotion down there and that feeling.
How about the landfill in Staten Island?
Oh, there's definitely
Yeah.
fresh kill landfill is definite.
Mhm.
And you got to remember at the museum, that's where they're housing the human remains that have not yet been identified.
Yeah.
And you'll see a little sign, a little placard that says property of the Office of Chief Medical Examiner, City of New York. And there's a blue wall, and behind that blue wall is where they are. And until DNA gets more and more
Yeah.
sophisticated,
Yep.
that's where they'll be housed until, and that's, I believe that place will forever be hallowed ground for people. And it's like it's like Pearl Harbor. I mean, you still have sailors and Marines that are underwater.
That's an episode for the future. We've always talked about that. Aerial ghosts and underwater ghosts. Nobody's ever invested. Like the World Trade Center would be an example of if someone died on the 83rd floor, would you talk to them down on ground level or would they be contacting you from?
Good question.
Todd, it looks like you're going to have to buy an underwater drone.
And same with like Pearl Harbor. They're all underwater. Their physical presence is underwater.
I think if
Could you actually talk to them? Actually, I think one of the ghost shows tried to do underwater.
Well,
didn't
I
they?
mean, it was
Yeah.
like, you think about Grace Brown at Big Moose. I mean, her ghost was either in the building or above the water. But again, we're trying to end
Sorry.
the show.
That's all right, Pete.
Go home, Pete.
We want to thank you again for watching. Hopefully, we can return to this subject in a future episode. I could definitely talk about cemeteries and gravestones for another 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
You sick.
But stay on Disruption Network. Look at their other stuff on there. We want to thank them for everything that they've done. They've got a podcast that's coming out weekly every Monday. It's Unbreakable, the Donato Nappy story. Unbelievable story. It's definitely listen into that. Make sure you like Disruption Network on their Facebook. Make sure you like Agent Paranormal. We also have another Facebook group that you can kind of follow, and that's the Ghost Stories of Oneida County. You can go on there, share your own stories, so we can kind of share with everybody's experiences throughout the area. And until next time, I'm
What's
Kevin.
Pete doing?
I don't know what Pete's
Pointing to Agent Paranormal.
Oh.
Oh, I'll help. Nope, this way.
I wasn't
trying to-
sure.
Until next time, I'm Kevin. I'm Vinny, Pete, and Steph. We're Agent Paranormal. And we'll
Thank you.
scare you later.
Bye.